President Trump fires his attorney general and puts his former defense lawyer in charge of the DOJ. The war in Iran rages on as American allies express frustration with Trump's latest comments. Tonight, Congressman Mike Quigley gets to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Taman Bradley, this is The Point.
Good evening, I'm Micah Mater. Taman Bradley is off tonight. In Washington, Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General after a turbulent 14-month tenure that has reshaped the Department of Justice. New York Times is reporting President Trump was annoyed by Bondi's inability to secure indictments of his political adversaries. The departure follows bipartisan backlash over DOJ's handling of files related to the investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Bondi once said Epstein's client list was on her desk. Then the department said that didn't exist. She also handed out binders of Epstein files to conservative influencers, who then said they contained no new revelations. The president reportedly complained about Bondi's appearances on TV, like this one last February.
There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe
Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God.
First of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible. Donald Trump signed that law. He is the most transparent president.
Still, President Trump complimented Bondi today on social media, calling her a loyal friend who's moving to the private sector. Tonight, Democrats are insisting that Bondi will still need to answer questions from Congress later this month. There's another staff shakeup in the Department of Defense. Tonight, Secretary Pete Hegseth has asked the Army's Chief of Staff to retire immediately as the country's war in Iran continues to escalate into its fifth week. Iran fired more missiles at Israel today in response to President Trump's claims its ability to fight back has nearly been eliminated. President Trump also is claiming high gas prices are now hitting record levels amidst the war that won't last long.
This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons.
Illinois Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democrat who represents the 5th District, is joining me tonight to talk about what's next. Congressman, thanks so much for speaking with us tonight.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, let's start off with the firing of Pam Bondi. What's your reaction?
She was an extraordinary sycophant for the president, and I'm guessing that she wasn't sycophantish enough, or it wasn't effective in going after his political enemies. Either way, the revolving door is starting earlier in this administration. Toward the end of Trump's first term, he was churning through his staff. We're starting to see that early on right now, in part because of his frustration and some of the shortcomings that are taking place and how the economy is doing as well.
And as you said, Kristi Noem, late last month, he got rid of her as well. Who do you think should replace? Todd Blanche is the interim, is going to be the interim for now. What do you think about the replacement? Some people say Jeanine Pirro. Others say that maybe his EPA director.
Well, it's going to be someone that he thinks can get approved in the Senate. And someone who's going to do exactly what he says. Unfortunately, this is no longer any sense of an independent agency carrying out his law enforcement. It is literally what he sees as his own private prosecutor's firm to go after people he doesn't like. So it's just going to be someone who's just as much of a yes person, but perhaps in his mind more effective. The problem they will face is the same thing that she did. You know, grand juries will at some point resist what they perceive to be obvious political attacks.
And historically, as we know, the Justice Department works independent of presidential influence. That really hasn't been the case, has it?
No, it hasn't. And that should scare people. It's simply not getting enough attention. This is what tyrants do. I think we forget sometimes that there are those who have got elected in the democratic process, and then they use the tools of a democracy to help tear it down. We've seen the weaponization of more than one agency, including the military, and the president's focusing on the Attorney General's office for now.
It's obvious that you and other Democrats are opposed to this. What needs to be done, or what should be taking place right now to make changes to that?
Yeah, look, this is all up to the Senate. The fact of the matter is, they're the ones that are going to have to stand up. I would like to think there are a few Republicans that recognize why this matters. The first breaks and fissures from the president's stranglehold on Congress came because of the Epstein files. And there was no one who screwed up the Epstein file issue more than Bondi did. So I'd like to think that just a handful, and that's all it would take, would resist this and force the administration to hire someone who's independent and a professional.
You talk about Bondi again and the mishandling, as you say, of the Epstein files. She is set to testify to the House Oversight Committee April 14th. Should she still do it? What do you think?
Well, if she's got an order to do it, she has to. Whether or not she will, you know, we've seen Trump administration officials and former officials duck this sort of responsibility. I'm hoping that that the committee holds true to this. If they have to force the issue on the subpoena to have her there and answer questions, then so be it. The bottom line, this would help a great deal to get to the root cause and the problems with the Epstein files, and to get justice for the victims, which is the most important reason that we do this anyway.
And James Comer saying today that he's going to get the consensus from Republicans on whether it should go forward or not. Nancy Mace, of course, saying yes, she was subpoenaed. Pretty much what you're saying. She was subpoenaed, so she should do it. Let's talk a little bit about last night's speech by the president. It was touted as a timeline to the end in Iran, of the war in Iran, but he didn't really set down an exact date or a time limit.
What the American people wanted was a coherent understanding of what this war is about. Why are we there, right? The public wants this from every war. There was a great documentary in the Second War by Frank Capra, Why We Fight. Well, it's a very fair question. Why are we doing this? What's the strategy? What is the end game? Because this public, the last thing they want is another endless, bloody, expensive war in the Middle East. And the president seems to think that he can script this, that he can control its outcome. So I think one of the things you saw besides this incoherent pattern is the president creating every eventuality in his explanation. It's no longer about a regime change, even though when the fighting started, he told the people of Iran, your day of liberation is coming. And they even said that the fact that the leadership change because the original ruler was killed means that there's regime change. It's just a leadership change. If this was about the nuclear program, which the president informed us was totally obliterated at the end of last year, then perhaps the president shouldn't have withdrawn the U.S. from the JCPOA treaty, a treaty in which the Iranians were in compliance. They were not moving toward developing a nuclear weapon. So I don't know what's next. I don't know that anyone knows but the president, and maybe tomorrow morning he changes his mind. Because just last week he was talking, what, unconditional surrender? And now it's, well, we may be done in 2 or 3 weeks, but we're going to escalate in the meantime.
The president saying today that the government will no longer fund Medicare, Medicaid. It's going to be up to the states when you have a lot of people who need that money.
Yeah, look, again, no great surprise that the president likes to change issues overnight when things aren't going well. So things aren't going well with the economy. They're not going well with the war. So let's make it something new. I can't imagine that the president is going to have a majority in both houses that agree with him on this. This would be a devastating body blow to the American people. These are cornerstones of what keeps our people healthy. This is what cornerstones of not just for seniors, but for every American. So it's just hard for me to imagine he can pull this off. It's just, I'm not sure where this idea came from, but I just remind everyone, this is only the second year of a 4-year term. it's a scary time. We've got our work cut out for us.
In 30 seconds or less, when are you going to officially launch your campaign for mayor, and what's your main focus?
Look, right now, this is a city I love. It's a city in crisis. The main focus, first of all, has to be getting our fiscal house in order. The issue the public's going to be most concerned about is affordability. That begins with housing, but the cost of local government and our property taxes, close second.
Congressman Quigley, thank you so much for talking with us this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime.
And we'll be right back in 60 seconds. Chicago Inspector General Deborah Witzberg says Mayor Brandon Johnson has been reflexively hostile to oversight. In an interview with Sun-Times reporter Fran Spielman out tonight, Witzberg says Johnson's law department has withheld records from her office and declined to implement recommendations from the IG. The mayor's office and the IG have not seen eye to eye on a number of issues. That includes a spat over access to the City Hall gift room and refusal to fire a top mayoral aide. Mayor's office is telling the Sun-Times that they are committed to public transparency and suggesting the IG's comments might compromise the credibility of the office. Witzberg's 4-year term is slated to end April 24th. No word yet on who might replace her. And that is The Point this Thursday. I'll be back with more news at 9 o'clock. Forecasters is up next on WGN+.